welcome back to the InkSink. I am Annie.
I'm Kaylee.
This is the publishing podcast for the rest of us. We are talking about so much news today.
Lots happened.
So
a lot.
It's been a while since we recorded. I had a pet problem. I'm so sorry.
Look, we all know things happen. Most of us have had pets or currently have pets, and it's not a big deal.
My cat peed on the couch, specifically in the spot where Kaylee normally sits to record.
This cat, I don't know, like, normally cats love me, but she's terrified of me, and also, maybe she just doesn't like Widge.
Maybe she doesn't like your smell.
She doesn't like, and Widge, that's so weird, because, like, most cats love my smell. Maybe that's, like, she just doesn't like Widge. And maybe I mean that specifically, they bury themselves into my shoes. That's genuinely weird and, like, dives into headfirst my shoes regularly.
Which does?
Yes.
That's funny.
She wears my... I've shown you multiple pictures of her wearing my shoes.
You know, it's really interesting because Ripley does that to my husband's shoes. And when my best friend Amber is over, she does it to her shoes. She never does that to my shoes. And do I smell bad? Everyone, write in and tell me if you think my feet smell bad. We're going to do a quick poll here.
Digital poll about the actual physical smell of...
We never get emails. You guys need to email us. InkSinkPodcast@gmail.com.
Inviting foot feedback is really the avenue.
You know what, Kaylee?
You're right. We should go for it. Any avenue that we can.
Send us your shower routines. Whether just from our voices you think that we have feet that smell good.
Yep.
And what else have we solicited? Oh, and your work that you've written so that we can have all these things. We want all of this in our inbox.
Absolutely.
And if you're wonderful, you should send us pictures of your pets because we love them. Absolutely.
Like, we can't, obviously it's a podcast, but we'll talk about how cute your pets are.
We will. We'll be like, oh,
this is little Muffin, and he's got cute little cheeks, and he's got a waggy little tail.
Yes. Everybody send us in your
please do
pet pics. Brandon, I expect to see a picture of Roscoe. If you don't send me a picture of Roscoe, I'm going to be really mad. Okay? I'm saying it right now.
I want to see Roscoe, Brendan. I want to see Roscoe. I've never seen Roscoe, and now I'm sad.
You've never seen Roscoe? Roscoe's so cute. She's a little mini pig.
We did go on a tangent, didn't we?
Do you have anything else you want to chat about, Kaylee? Or you want to jump into the news?
I mean, I don't want to, but let's do it.
Well, I sent you, I felt like a pretty fun one to get us started with.
True. That's true.
Do you want to intro this one for us?
Yeah, all right. So we had the midnight release party, like a history of that. Have you ever been to a midnight release party?
I don't remember ever going to a midnight release party, but I remember them happening, and I remember being really annoyed that I couldn't go to I want to say it was the Breaking Dawn midnight release party.
Really?
I couldn't go, and I was really mad at it. Like, I was super mad. Like, I was like, fair. Mom, you're ruining my life.
I definitely did one of the... I didn't realize this was new, honestly. I thought this had happened because I was a teenager.
Sure. You just figured that everybody did this.
I was too young to do them before. I didn't know about them before because I wasn't into, like, whatever books that were happening. No, it was apparently so. I kind of jumped the gun a little bit. So the midnight release party is for when, books are being released, and it's kind of like within movies, when they let them out, like, release them, like, the day before at midnight, that night, or at 10 p.m., which is what they've started to do. That's showing before. It's like a party where a bunch of fans can get together. They'll have, like, themed activities. There's usually a small fee to get in. They'll have, like, raffles and stuff you can do, and it's a way to really kind of congregate, promote the work, promote the author, promote other works. Like, these usually happen in bookstores, and the idea is hopefully you find other things. Like, that's getting people in the door, like with anything, and hoping that they'll spend money, which they're going to, at least on the book that's for, probably. So it started with the Harry Potter books. It was, and I think it was probably the 4th or 5th book. So it may have been like the first one that they did. I don't know. I have to really think back to when I went. But I did a midnight release party. It was so much fun. Yeah.
For the 4th or 5th book?
It was one of them. I don't remember which one it was. Yeah.
I do remember hotly anticipating the 3rd book and going out the day it was released, but it was like the day after. Mm-hmm. And I was also like 12, so it's a little different.
That's fair. Well, no, I mean, yeah.
Or like, no, wait, hold on. So I was 6 when the first book came out, and the 3rd book came out 4 years later, so I was 10. Oh my god. Wow. Harry Potter has just been a huge part of my life. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just going to deal with that for a minute, Kaylee. Keep talking.
Well, no, that's why I was like surprised when I realized that this is what started. So as Annie said, they started cropping up more, and I think that's delightful. I really hope they continue, and they are. Like, they're expanding out, which makes sense because our generation, it's like a fun way to like kind of have little mini festivals or conventions. Like, we like to nerd out with fellow fans. Like, we like to have that sense of community, but in a very small, limited fashion that we can immediately retreat from.
Yeah, at midnight after you
have
get your
a
book,
burst. We can get our book. We can talk about it for like 5 minutes, and then if you want to, you can leave.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to say it. I think that's wonderful.
And all the activities are really leading up to that midnight moment when you can get in line and grab the book,
absolutely,
and buy it, or if you pre-ordered it, just pick it up.
I was just thinking, if I were to actually sincerely quit my current line of my career and go into event planning or vacation planning or something like that.
You're really good at both those things.
Thank you. Everybody says that, actually. So if I wanted to, if I thought I could actually put the time and energy and deal with people enough to do that in another customer service job, which I don't recommend. But if I did, I would totally do something like this. Like, the Dresden Files have like a murder mystery style, like add that to the thing, have that be part of it leading up to like the end of the night.
Ooh, that would be so cool.
And we just have like people like doing immersive activities. Like, that's a thing. Like, people like being engaged and having like a sort of directed activity, and then they can retreat, get the book, and go. Yeah, and that'd be so much fun.
Totally. Like, I'd put you in charge of events at my bookstore in my head.
We got our retirement planned out. I think we figured it out.
It'll be great. So this story was from Book Riot, and they were just going through the history of midnight release parties, and they do mention that the original ones really started with Harry Potter and then moving up. The first one that I remember missing out on was one of the Twilight ones that was Breaking Dawn. That would have been much later.
Yeah. Well, they were talking about that and how it was also promoting like the film.
Yes. So this is something that we don't really talk about that often, but YA as a genre didn't really exist before the Harry Potter Twilight moment.
Yeah, it was when I was a kid, outside of like the library where they would try to provide sections for younger readers. When I was a kid, and I used to live in bookstores, Mom spent so much money at Walden Books and stuff back in the day. Same. I would just spend hours in this just straight up sci-fi fantasy section and just try to find stuff that was interesting to me. There were kids sections. That was just like young readers stuff. You'd have really small quote unquote chapter books, but like nothing that was a novel like we would think about today for YA stuff.
And I appreciate that. So that this article goes into, we'll post it on the show notes, but it goes into how it grew up. And recently, I would say probably the biggest midnight release party that I heard about recently was Sally Rooney's Beautiful World, Where Are You?
Yeah,
I think that was their most recent one. I'd have to look it up. And that one was like, people who were adults at that point. Sally Rooney writes adult fiction, not like adult fiction, but just literary fiction about people fucking each other. So actually,
I mean, it's not necessarily about that, but usually it's heavily engaged in yeah.
And this book or this article also goes into some comics stuff. I didn't realize that The Walking Dead and Saga had been having midnight release parties. I clearly am not hanging out with the right people, or I would 100% have gone to those. I feel like the biggest bookstore days anymore are just Free Comic Book Day and then like specific days that like all bookstores are participating in. I can't think of any big like, my local bookstore is doing, but in fairness, our local bookstore is just a comic shop, so it's a little bit different.
I was just thinking about that. I think I want to contact, so there's a Games and Stuff is actually one of the largest board game and miscellaneous store on the East Coast.
Really?
I did not know that until this year. Huh. Yeah, so we have this, it's wonderful. It's a great store.
Yeah, it's not as local.
For us,
it's far away.
It's not that far. To be fair, that's where my grandma lives. She lives like 10 minutes from that store, so maybe it feels local to me.
Yeah.
But it's right at the mouth of the Cromwell. It's like right across the street from the Cromwell light rail station in Baltimore, and in Glen Burnie, I should say. Sorry. So just south of Baltimore. But like, yeah. And so I guarantee they do like more regular events. Or at least they used to, for sure.
Definitely.
And they probably started again.
Well, they used to have a bigger book section. I definitely trust whoever their book curator is fantastic. Every time I go in there, I want to buy every single book. They do great stuff. That was where I first found Gideon the Ninth.
Really?
And
that
also,
makes perfect sense, actually.
Natural History of Dragon. Their taste is pitch perfect. Like, they're so good, but it's such a small book selection now.
Yeah.
That it's different. Anyway,
but what I'm saying is it's probably curated by like the manager, the owner, the franchisee,
definitely,
or whatever. So
definitely.
like, it'd probably be something where you'd have to be really tied into that community to know.
Yeah,
unless
probably.
it was a national thing. Like,
mm-hmm.
like I think I just found out about when I was a kid. To be fair, like the Harry Potter thing, they definitely advertised it, but they advertised it while you were in the store. It's kind of like when you go to the movies nowadays, and Nicole Kidman tells you to go to the movies, and you're like, Nicole, I'm literally
ma'am
here right now.
Ma'am,
please, AMC, stop. Stop showing. Why? We are not the audience that needs to see this.
And then it's always followed up with an ad for the specific movie theater that you're in. It's like, and these local events coming up at your theater. Here's just like, I'm already here.
I don't understand. Just
stop
show me the
selling
movie.
it to me.
I paid you money.
I know. The transaction has been completed. Stop trying to make me buy it again.
I don't know. Alex and I have been talking about that, and all we can think is that they're like, they paid Nicole Kidman too much money, and they're like, we're going to show this, we're going to get our money's worth. Whether you like it or not.
We are forcing her on this press tour, which means everyone is suffering. Poor Nicole Kidman. It is, and it's always like an A-list or an A-list director coming in and being like, go to the movies. It's for,
movies are
people.
good.
You're like, okay.
You like
I'm
movies?
here. I did it already.
I'm here, though. Like, that's...
Teamwork. We've done it together. Anyway, so this Book Riot article ends with the quote that I'm going to read. And I agree with this. It says, "It will be interesting to see if the Book Talk famous authors get the Midnight Party release treatment, because they have not yet." I just add that, because they have not yet, pardon. "And how well those do. Print book sales were still up in 2021 despite the wide availability of e-readers, so it's possible that the convergence of social media-supported party experiences and interest in print books could reinvigorate the big..."
Midnight.
So it's possible that the convergence of social media-supported party experiences and interest in print books could reinvigorate the midnight release. I think that's true. Accurate.
And especially considering one of the articles we're going to talk about later with Pearson.
Yeah.
And like digital sales and all that. Like it just reinforces my desire. Because whenever I really like a book, like especially one that like I found through, like if I've just picked it up really cheap online, or found it through another source. And I found some free books through other sources. The Baen Free Library is another one that they do. They provide... So guys, Baen is really nice. They provide a lot of their older content.
I've not heard of this.
For free. Baen is a publisher, Baen. And I think it's probably transitioned to call... I know it is, because I recently looked them up and was reading one of their books. It's called something else now, but if you look up the Baen Free Library, it's there. Okay. They provide just a lot of their backlog available to the public. Like, wow. It's really cool. Not everything, obviously, but like the ones that they've probably negotiated, I need to look up more specifically about like how they've done it. But yeah, it's really cool.
That's cool.
So anyway, so there are other sources, but like if I find something I really like, I'll buy a physical copy, even though I moved a lot.
Absolutely. I do the same thing.
Because fucking Kindle and digital copies, when they recently did the DRM thing where like they're like people that have they're like retracting their books or whatever when something they don't like happens. It's bullshit. That's all I'm gonna say. Anyway,
it is. If I think I'm gonna read a book more than once, or if a book really affected me and I really love it, I will absolutely buy a physical copy if I've like borrowed it from the library or gotten it on ebook or something. And I don't think that that's weird. I think that we're pretty normal.
I agree. But I mean, also, if you can, obviously, like, it's not an option for everybody. Totally get that. It's just that with the way things are going, I recommend in general that if you really love something or you want something to reference or to provide to expand out like the community of people that have read it, get a physical copy.
Mm-hmm. What book would you go to a midnight release for? Coming up.
Any T. Kingfisher book, frankly. Like, genuinely, any T. Like, if they were just like, it's a book you've never heard of, and I'm like, that's fine.
You would go to the midnight release?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. I was actually just thinking about this, about, like, stuff that's coming out soon. So you already know that I'm interested in the Percy Jackson series, because I read that YA series when I was a kid. I just recently reread it, because it's so much fun. Mm-hmm. If they came out with any more books or did any reprints, something along those lines to kind of also get people interested in the show, like, I would totally do that.
Yeah.
Any Dresden Files books I'd totally go out to. Mm-hmm. What about you?
Monstrous Trade Volume 7 is coming out.
That's a good point. I forgot to check the release dates on some stuff. That's a good point.
And I will obviously be purchasing it immediately. Rereading the series because it just has so much rereadability. It's so good. I love it so much. And the art,
you guys, is gorgeous.
It's incredible.
So absolutely, Monstrous is such a good answer to that. And now that I'm thinking about comics, like the Lady Mechanica series would totally go to a midnight release party for that. Like that would be so much fun. Again, think of all like the themed activities that you could do, and you could have like costumes and stuff. We all like dressing up. Guys,
for those of you who haven't read Lady Mechanica, it's an indie comic, but it's all steampunk.
It's so much
It's
fun.
so good.
The aesthetic is just on point.
It's very cool. It's really interesting that, and probably obvious to anyone who thought about it for more than 2 seconds, which I hadn't before now, that these are all books in a series. And with the exception, I guess, of like Sally Rooney, who it's just you're buying an author.
Or the T. Kingfisher books for me. Like I said, 100%. Like I really bought into like her style in that, under that pen name. I love her handling of characters. And so I think in that case, like if I were to go to something like that, like unless they did a lot of hype for the book, it would be more of like a general sort of more normal promotional, like, it'd be a midnight release party, but it would be a more normal like promotional material for that book as she's selling that book, unless it was in like the Clockwork Boys world, which is a world that she is building. Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. Well, we will keep an eye out, and if there is a midnight release party, let's commit to going to it and then reporting back.
Absolutely.
Moving on to news. Kaylee, I have been pressuring and wanting this. Like, I think one of the things that we talked about,
manifesting.
We never, I think, released this episode into the wild, but we talked about what is our wish for the internet for the future, and I was like, you know what I fucking want?
Curated news experience.
I want a app, a plugin, literally anything that will let me pay them whatever, $5, $10, $20 a month to just be able to access any article on any news site that I want and not get paywalled by the Washington Post because I've gone through my one free article, or the Atlantic, or the New York family of brands because I've been paywalled and I just want to read the one. I don't want to pay for the whole thing. Do you have any idea how much easier my job would be? So I work for a company that does investment research. So I'm doing a lot of research and writing and looking up and just figuring out numbers, and I do so much research. It would be so much easier if I didn't have to subscribe to Nat Geo for $2.99 a month and then cancel it immediately because I really just needed the 2 articles that are citing the climate studies because they have the analysis that everyone else is quoting. Like, it would make it so much easier, or the popular mechanics stuff, so I can get the information on the new technology that I need and not have to go through this super dense article that would also be $20 just for a view. You guys have no idea how annoying it is that I have to get paywalled every 2 minutes when I am just trying to do my job. Do you have any idea how expensive it would be for me to actually subscribe to every single one of these magazines, journals, news articles, just to get the information that I need to write what I have to write every week? Having an app where I just pay them the whatever dollars so that I can get the 1 or 2 WAPO articles I need a month, or the 1 or 2 Nat Geo articles I need a month, or the 1 or 2 Nature articles I need a month. I would be so happy. There's a startup that's planning on maybe doing this.
So that's the end answer of this. Sorry, I wanted Annie to just get that all out of us and burn it out. Burn bright.
I want you to understand that Kaylee has just been sitting here nodding while I go. She's like, go get it out, honey. Yep. It's okay. Tell us how you feel. It's healthy.
I know that this has hurt you, so please tell us all about it.
It hurts. It hurts me that I have to do this.
Like, girl, and to be fair, paywalls hurt us all. And
people should be getting paid for their journalism, but I should not have to pay $50 a month to get 3 articles, you know?
So yes, I actually want to know if there's a way to get into this beta.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not even in beta yet. Yeah. So I'm very curious.
So the app has been proposed by a startup, and this has been tried before. Many apps in the past have tried. This article comes to us from Pointer, and a 26-year-old entrepreneur is trying it out this time, and their app is called Zette, Z-E-T-T-E, and this young entrepreneur is attempting to go at it again, and I really, really, really want someone to make this work, because it would be invaluable for those of us who would use it. I'm worried that it would turn into like a movie pass situation where it's actually not profitable because too many people would use it, but that's like a good problem to have, right? That means that a lot of people want it. I want it. I need it. It's in beta. It's actually not even in beta. It's in alpha at the moment, but it just secured a round of venture capital funding, which is very interesting. We've talked about this on the show before. Venture capital has been deprioritizing news technology. So this is one of the rare ones to come up recently where venture capital is jumping into news technology. I wonder if this is going to be something that we see more of in the future.
I hope so. I genuinely, it looked interesting, and I think that maybe the reason that venture capital is contributing is that people are clamoring for it. And then separate from that, the startup creator, the visionary behind this, she's got some
credentials.
Yeah, she's got some street cred at this point. She's done a couple other things. She's had her own startup company that she's based. That was she built it in such a way that it was scalable. So I think that they're willing to give her a shot because, again, it is something that there is a lot of interest in.
Absolutely, and it kind of relates to the thing that we talked about young people doing more work to verify information that they see online. Because they're getting paywalled too. So maybe this time the market is even more primed for it because the major internet users these days are in fact teens. I think there was a study released recently, and I don't know it off the top of my head, but I think something like 95% of teens say that they use the internet often every single day.
Oh yeah.
So I would say that maybe this is the time. Maybe now we're going to finally be able to establish that this market needs to be served. And we'll be able to finally not have me accidentally leave my Nat Geo subscription going for 3 months and spend an obnoxious amount of money every month.
It's a problem.
The way the internet is structured right now is really annoying, I think, for users. And when you have something that's really annoying for users, that is rife for disruption. And so my fingers are all crossed, all my fingers and my toes, that this one works out. Moving into books.
Speaking of, holy smokes, there was a lot about this that I kind of generally knew about. So Penguin Random House and the Simon & Schuster acquisition and just...
the drama. There's a lot of drama.
Yeah, I did not realize how much there was.
So Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster are attempting to merge. If you don't know much about books, it's fine. Basically, there are 5 large publishers in the US. Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster are 2 of those, and they are attempting to merge. It will be the biggest company in publishing after that. There's no way to really argue that. And so the Department of Justice said, that sounds like a monopoly, and we don't like that. Mm-hmm. So the Department of Justice is suing them to stop the merger. And they knew this was coming. There are internal emails that were leaked when this suit was announced of Penguin Random House PRH. We call it PRH just because that's far fewer syllables. PRH executives saying, there's no way that the government's going to let us do this. We'll back it up. But this is clearly not a thing that they're going to let us do. And people at Simon & Schuster, which we call S&S, saying, yeah, there's no way they're going to let us do it. But yeah, let's try it. And then the Department of Justice did, in fact, try and stop them. And now they're like, no.
What?
We're
not a monopoly.
What? So the Department of Justice went to Maine and fought off all the creatures and grabbed Stephen King and brought him into the courtroom. Did you see that? That was my favorite thing.
No.
Is he, so they brought him in to testify about competition in the space. And he talked about his history in publishing and talking about how it was a really specific time. He acknowledges that we really can't go back to, the way things used to be. But he said, look, if there weren't multiple publishers out there, bids wouldn't have happened, and I would never have been able to make a living as a writer. And this is Stephen King talking, so he has a lot of clout. But at the beginning of his testimony, they said, introduce yourself and say what you do for a living. And he says, hello, my name is Stephen King. I am a freelance writer. And everyone laughed because he's,
Stephen King.
Stephen fucking King.
Right.
I'm sorry, what's your occupation? I am Stephen motherfucking King, ma'am.
Just drops the mic.
I know, my first published book was Carrie. That should tell you something. Anyway, so They grabbed Stephen King. Twitter has been abuzz with all of this. Kaylee, you're not on Twitter. I don't know if this is filtered through to the other wilds of the internet that you frequent, but basically every day of the trial has been just a new meme storm of people being like, how do these people justify anything? So basically, Stephen King, representing the writers, says, more competition is better. More competition means that more people will be able to have these opportunities. And Penguin Random House and Simon and Schuster have said, oh, well, the opportunities wouldn't be less. We would still, bid as different arms. And Stephen King's like,
no, you wouldn't.
No, you wouldn't. That's like, say, a husband and wife saying that they would put in separate bids for the same house. Like, that's not a thing that anyone would do. And even if they did, there's no way they would be fair about it. Jumping in for the literary agents, the agents said that they don't like this. They're the ones who sell books to these publishers, and they say, obviously less competition is bad for us. More people in an auction generally mean higher prices for both the agent and the authors, or at higher advances coming in. So there's no way that anyone would want a smaller pool of people to sell to. The only people who really seem to be in favor,
go figure,
are the CEOs who jump in, and the PRH and SNS CEOs both jumped in and said, don't you worry, we would never, ever fix
prices.
Cross
my heart.
Can't imagine why you'd think that. But the discourse on Twitter, I sent you a tweet thread from Courtney Milan, who is probably one of my favorite publishing commentators. They were talking about the fact that there are independent authors out there who can even, fund their stuff on Kickstarter, and the CEOs are using this as a reason to say, it's not like there's less competition out there. And Courtney Milan, who is a published author, she says, no, most freelance writers, like he said, we're freelance. We can't unionize. We can't actually make that work at scale. The only people who are going to make money are people like Brandon Sanderson, who can leverage their massive, massive followings
that they acquired in traditional publishing.
Exactly, to set those records.
Such obviously bullshit, of course. It's just so stupid. Like, I can't even. It's just wasting everybody's money. Okay, so let's just circle back to the fact that you're trying to price gouge, that you are currently, not trying to, you're currently price gouging libraries.
You're already on our shit list.
Yes, that's true. To be fair, like, quite biased.
Yes.
I'm already there.
We are clearly quite biased on this.
But you're already price gouging libraries. You're turning, like, fucking student this is coming later, so we may jump to this just because
let's jump to it.
Okay, so if you've ever done any sort of study in which you are personally required to purchase your materials, and this could be a private school situation, like where you're working with your children's books or media content, whatever they need to buy, or in college, university, any sort of secondary education or tertiary education, where you have to buy things and then ultimately you might want to try to resell them to recoup some of your losses. So for a variety of reasons, again, just to circle back, authors do not get a lot of money for purchases. A lot of the money that you're providing goes to the publisher, it goes to the distributor, etc. So just making that acknowledgement. Digital copies have always been kind of just like, well, you bought them, you're a little cheaper, and then you can potentially, depending on what you do with the DRMs and the content, which we are not advocating anything that is illegal, you can share them even if you just let somebody borrow your computer or something like that. Like, you can share that way. But they're trying to now make that available via, like, fucking NFTs. You can't get away from them. And now they want to get in on the secondary resale action, and it's just, you're price gouging poor students now.
To be clear, Pearson is not involved in this lawsuit, but it is just one. This is one
a separate
more example.
Thing. Sorry, it's a separate thing. That
we'll get into this next, but it does show that publishers genuinely don't care about the users, about the writers, about the agent. So one of the things that these CEOs did to try and say, oh, well, we would never be weird about auctions and stuff, they were like, oh, the CEOs, we don't even review sales for acquisitions. Acquisitions is when someone the publisher purchases the book, and that's usually at the discretion of an acquiring editor. So an agent is usually selling to an acquiring editor, and they're like, oh, well, we don't really have a ton of control over that process. The editors are really independent. They get to do what they want to do. And then they're like, the editors are like, I mean, they approve. They approve and disapprove of the deals. Like, what do you think that they're just totally uninvolved? They're the ones who give us our budgets. Like, what are you talking about?
It's so much trash. I can't.
And then they specifically are like, the only ones where we require any input are the millions of dollars deals. And it's like, yeah? Is that... Are those the ones that you care about? What is that?
Keep in mind also, we've already talked about this a bit, especially if you're not one of the big name authors, you're still also having to do all of the promotional stuff for your book.
Right. The marketing, so publishers do have marketing teams and sales teams, but a lot of times they're not really focusing on individual books coming out. They really want you to be marketing your own book, which is, a lot of extra work that you are not being paid for. So this is something that
your hourly rate comes out to be pretty shit.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot, that a lot of people in publishing are not being paid very well. And so when we see something like this, where a CEO is like, oh, we'll be fine.
We wouldn't do anything that's shady or immoral. Like, bullshit, you piece of trash. I have so strong feelings about this. I'm so sorry to Annie's mother that I have such a trash mouth. I apologize, but they're terrible people and I hate them. It's
really crazy. Anyway, so obviously, again, we are biased. Though the verdict is not in for the PRH SNS trial yet. But if you would like to get mad, even more mad, here we have another case of a publisher being absolutely ridiculous when it comes to other people's money. Kaylee, tell us what Pearson is doing in more detail.
Okay, so except for like the NFT bros, we pretty much all hate NFTs. Maybe not everybody. You've got a few people that are into it, but like they're just that's what a gimmick. Anyway, setting that all aside, now Pearson is a publisher of educational texts, and I can't believe one of the quotes they said, that they're not getting a share of the resale of their books. I'm like, let's just be very clear. If it's a digital copy, so what they're doing is they're making NFTs of their books. If it's a digital copy of the book, people weren't getting money for this resale. I mean, I don't know. To be fair, I can't say that across the board, but it seems very likely that at most somebody was getting like $5 for this. So you're not exactly hurting here. And
basically, Pearson wants to essentially just jump into the problem. And I got the impression that they also wanted to try and find a way to make this on the physical textbooks too.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
That they're
going to start integrating stuff digitally in their books, and then they're going to make it locked if you haven't transferred the NFT to somebody else's name, for sure. 100%.
So when I was in college, the textbooks already had, a lot of the science and math textbooks already had digital components that were really difficult to transfer from one person to another, and it was very difficult to get those used. You could get paper textbooks used, but basically what Pearson wants is to capture more of that market because it feels that it deserves more money, and it doesn't feel that changing the textbook every couple of years and forcing everyone to buy a new version is enough money. Obviously, again, we are clearly extremely biased. As someone who is in school right now and who has been absolutely saved by libraries allowing me to rent textbooks for free, that's lovely. And by things like Scribd and Kindle Unlimited allowing me to get textbooks very cheaply. It's been lovely, but I cannot for the life of me understand why Pearson, who is charging, and I want to be clear, like, your average Algebra 2 textbook is like $200, or it was when I was in college.
It's more now. No, I guarantee it's more now.
And so they think that, when someone is selling something, that they should be getting a cut of it, and get that idea. But we at the InkSink have come out pretty strongly against things like forcing people to license digital content instead of purchase it, or find some way to make more money on someone who is just trying to buy a freaking book.
They're all, again, students.
College is already so expensive.
College is really expensive, and for the most part, most of the country does not have wildly wealthy parents that are paying for it.
Right.
Like,
school is fucking expensive for everyone, and finding ways to pay for it is just so hard already.
You're making it already harder for people that don't have it's already so difficult for so many people.
Yeah, exactly. And we've talked about this before, like there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. Do what you need to do to further your life and keep yourself healthy and safe and happy. But college is one of those things that's just, it feels like such a scam sometimes, and this is not helping. Moving on to our favorite news section, celebrating women and minorities in publishing. This first one comes to us from LitHub. It is how one group of Global South writers is decolonizing literature. Kaylee, had you heard of any of these books? I had not, and I felt like that was probably one of the main
reasons that
things in favor. Yeah.
I absolutely had not, and I thought that was, and I think that's like their point is that, and I mean, and they even discussed that, like, there's a Nobel Award winner that caused a big kerfluffle because it wasn't easily accessible to Western publishers, and I think that that's fascinating.
That was actually, I remember when that happened. I think that happened while we were on a break or something, but it happened during the course of this podcast where the Nobel Prize was given out and very few bookstores carried any of those books. And this was during one of the publishing issues that we were having during the pandemic, and people couldn't get a hold of the books. And it was like, why? And they said, well, no one had been reading them.
So it's a problem. And, I mean, you're limiting what people want to read. And the fact of the matter is it's been so hard for, Black and minority writers to get their works out there. And then when they do get out there, they sell really well. So it's not like, it's not obvious that you're full of shit.
Right.
So, like, stop catering to your own personal taste. Pay attention to the market research and the market trends and sell. Just buy the material. Diversify. Like, your business people, that's a big buzzword. Fucking diversify your content. Anyway, so this organization, this girl started this in South Africa, I believe.
A woman started it in South Africa. I'm going to read an excerpt of this from this article from LitHub. Radical Books Collective is a fast-growing initiative with an international audience of general readers, academics, intellectuals, and book lovers. As its name suggests, radical books are the primary focus. Fiction and nonfiction by authors and presses whose progressive, left-leaning politics and engagement with difficult topics such as police abolition, climate justice, feminism, and migration are often hard to market to mainstream publishers and media outlets. The format of the book club meetings is unique and suitably egalitarian. An hour-long discussion on the book is followed by a meeting with an author whom readers can engage in conversation. So it's basically this group of people who said, the kind of books that we want to read are just not being represented out there in these book groups, these public book groups, and so we will make our own. I do want to say, just because this is going to be going up on the show notes, there were some quotes in there that Kaylee and I do not necessarily stand by. We do encourage deep reading of complicated texts, but if for your health and happiness and sanity you prefer to read whatever fluff, smut, YA, silliness, escapism that you want to read, that is perfectly okay. Please do not feel pressured and do not feel shamed into reading these complicated texts just because someone on the internet tells you to. You are valid and you are loved just the way you are.
There is a lot going on in the world. We support anybody that wants to engage with these texts and a more complicated and in-depth reading, but
we also support people who don't.
Exactly.
But we do encourage people to seek out new writers. Maybe people from a country that you are not from who are writing in a language that you read and understand. They probably also have the fluffy escapism that you want as well. And we fully encourage you to find those people and engage with them and read their work. And if you would like to engage with the author directly through a book club like this, we will put a link in the show notes for the Radical Book Club profile on LitHub. And now for our favorite section. Kaylee, what are you reading?
I've been rereading Stardust, in addition to the novellas that I've been reading.
Which
before.
version have you been reading? The illustrated or the novelization?
Oh, the novelization. So I'm sorry. Yeah, to be fair,
they're different.
They?
They are very different.
You told me that, and I was like, I hadn't read the illustrated version. So what's different about? Or do we
so,
want to save this for later?
Well, we can talk about it. So I will say
about the movie.
We won't talk about the whole.
Okay.
I won't go into all of it. They are quite different. So as far as I remember, there are more characters in the novelization. So the novel has, as far as I remember, the man in the brown hat comes and stays with them before one of their journeys. It does not appear, and a couple other characters also don't appear in this version. So there are two versions. There's the novel, which is a full-length novel, and then there's the illustrated version that Neil Gaiman wrote with Charles Vess, Stardust. It's very, I mean, they're both really, really, really good. And they are, in fact, also quite different from the movie. We'll talk more about that next time we record. But I love them both. I actually read the novelization first and then discovered the comic version after that. How are you liking it? Had you forgotten anything?
Oh, yeah. I mean, always. I have a stupid amount of knowledge for obscure facts and stuff about stuff. So it all comes back to pretty easy. I wish I could remember more useful things. However, it's one of the books that I've enjoyed. I've purchased multiple times to reread on different platforms. I previously had multiple copies of the book. Similarly with Good Omens, I'd actually had multiple copies of the book. So when I moved, I did kind of consolidate, because it's a lot. I own it on Kindle. I owned it separately. Definitely read it through different sources, so I'm just enjoying the reread. I'm gonna rewatch the movie too.
It's such a good fun book. Yeah,
it's a good adventure story, and it's just funny.
Yeah,
it's so funny. His genre,
because this is Stardust is a fantasy book, but it's different. It feels like a fairy tale.
So anyway, Annie, what are you reading?
I have been resting my head on some cookbooks. I've finally decided that fanfic is too stressful. I've been super just obnoxiously stressed at work. Again, like for those who don't know, I have 2 jobs and I'm going to school, so it's like just a lot going on. And for some reason, I don't know when this started, but for like every birthday and Christmas, people have just been getting me like really specific cocktail recipe books. I have like 9 of them, and I'm not complaining. I read them when I'm just like super stressed out and need to not think about anything. So the one that I've been reading recently is called The Witch's Cocktail Book, and it's about just cocktails for witchy things. But the front part is describing all of these ingredients and objects and how and why they're magical. And it's like a paragraph each. I've never gone deep in the magical arcana. Why is basil good? And they go deep on it, and I'm like, whoa. And it's cool. Like looking into it's like looking at, a religion or something.
Herb lore.
Yeah, reading about the rituals and the tarot and stuff, and it's just like, you know what? Never read anything about this. Let's just look it up. So just like thinking about absolutely nothing. Head empty, just reading about tarot. It's been perfect. Yeah. Honestly. I haven't even gone to the cocktails. I'm like 3 chapters in.
That's well, you know what? We found the book version of the recipes online.
Exactly, Annie. Yeah. I have also been reading a book called Last Book on the Left, which is the book released by podcast hosts of the podcast Last Podcast on the Left, Marcus Parks, Ben Kissel, and Henry Zabrowski. And they are just true crime, serial killer obsessed, alien obsessed, cryptid obsessed dudes who have a podcast about it. So they released a book, and they're going through kind of like the greatest hits of serial killers, true crime stuff. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, why do I love this so much? Why do I love reading about serial killers? What is it about this morbid fascination that brings me joy? And I don't know the answer, because when I'm stressed, when I am feeling really, really, really nervous, for some reason, I want to read about serial killers. And I don't know why. I have only recently realized this about myself, because the other day I was like, you know what? This witchy cocktail book's not doing it for me. I need to read about serial killers. And I was like, wait, what? What weird thought process did I just have? I don't know. But yeah, reading about Ed Gein made me feel better, and I don't know why. Here's the question.
Tell me about Ed Gein.
So Ed Gein is the guy who robbed a bunch of graves and skinned the corpses and had human skin lampshades and like a box of noses in his house when they finally found several masks made of people's faces. So basically, Ed Gein, they can prove he killed 2 people. but he had the bodies of like 20 in his house because he had robbed many, many graves.
Interesting.
Apparently, in this time and place, a lot of people were just going missing.
Yeah. I was like, if it's just the bodies, they have proof that he killed people, then yeah, definitely.
Anyway, so I don't know why. Like, this just got, like, weirdly macabre and morbid, and I, for some reason, like, felt better yesterday.
It could be worse for you.
It could. I think that's probably what it is it could be worse. Some people watch reality TV to be like, I could be as horrible as a Kardashian. At least I'm not, thank goodness. I'm like, let me read about Ed Gein. At least I'm not Ed Gein.
Yep. I think that's like the only thing. I've been thinking about that when you said that that's like a thing for you, and I totally like that's the like off the top of my head, that's what I would go with. Like it's a look into something that's worse, and then you can step back into your own head and be like, well, I'm neither his victim nor him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah, and I know how to not be now.
Yeah.
I've got this knowledge in my head.
That's it. You're solving a problem that you hopefully never have to encounter. You might also.
It feels productive. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's an interesting theory.
And also, like, I don't know, it'd be something that might, like, look into, like, saving yourself from quicksand and see if it teaches you this, if it gives you the same vibe.
Okay,
because
like,
again,
just as you said that, I was like, yes, it would. It would absolutely give me the same vibe.
So,
how do you save yourself from quicksand?
You don't move a lot, and you, hope that you move very slowly to, like, the edge, wherever you can start shoring up, and if you can pull yourself out. Like, those are the things I know off the top of my head.
Interesting.
I haven't done an extensive amount of research.
Don't worry, I will.
Okay. But I'm just saying, like, that's it. Like, it's a problem that you hopefully never encounter, but now you have the tools to solve.
It's like distracting my brain from its current anxiety, and then also giving it that, like, little itty-bitty high of, like, having solved a problem. Yeah. Interesting.
Game theory.
Wow. Okay. I'm gonna look for some scholarly research on this now. We're gonna solve this
I'd love to know. Like, tell me if I was right.
Thanks for listening to the InkSync. I have been Annie.
I'm Kaylee.
And you can follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, on Bookshop, on... Oh, we're on Anchor and Spotify. If you would like to support us, I believe we have tiers as low as $1 a month. If you want to help us out, that'd be nice.
Yep. Again, it's going to go to the research that we do.
It'll go to support. So there are costs involved with the podcast. We do have to pay to get our podcast on Apple because Apple sucks. But if you help us out, we can keep coming to you on Apple. You can find all of the links and stuff on our show notes. Oh, YouTube. We're on YouTube now.
And we're on YouTube. That's right. I watch it on YouTube and I listen to it on Anchor.
There you go.
I'm two of our listeners. I'm sorry, cut all that out.
No, that's wonderful. Kaylee and my mom make up at least half of our listeners, and that's great. And Abby, thank you, Abby.
And Abby, thank you so much, Abby.
You're the best. We will see you next time.